The goal of this hearing is to promote balance in the Balkans. It is my hope that perhaps members on both sides of the aisle can agree on the common goal of serving U.S. interests as we seek to promote balance in this region, prosperity for its citizens, and deterrence of future conflicts. Excluding Russian aggression against Ukraine, the Western Balkans remains the most unstable region in Europe. Although open conflict has subsided since the breakup of Yugoslavia in the 1990s, centuries of ethnic division, shifting borders, and political mistrust continue to haunt this neighborhood as various political crises threaten the post-Yugoslav order. Case in point, Serbia's unresolved relationship with Kosovo is one of the core drivers of regional instability that has created a strategic fault line that enables Russia's ability to undermine the EU and NATO's ability to empower the Balkan countries. The 2023 Ohrid agreement between Serbia and Kosovo, intended to de-escalate immediate tensions and revive past agreements, has stagnated. Kosovo's election crisis has exacerbated this situation as a result of the republic's failure to form a government following its February 25 election, causing Kosovo's current preparation for another snap election on December 28th. Following the election, if Kosovo forms a government, it is my sincere hope that Serbia will finally recognize Kosovo's sovereignty. The rapidly deteriorating situation in Bosnia has led to an exponential increase of the use of legally questionable bond powers by the High Representative. This unchecked authority, which enables the High Representative to strike or impose legislation and remove officials from office, was dormant from 2014 to 2021. But in recent years, their use has surged significantly. The United States has long supported efforts to build an independent and credible judiciary in Albania. After 10 years of implementation, however, it is appropriate to re-examine whether justice reform is functioning as intended and delivering impartial justice for the Albanian people. It should be concerning to all that the national case backlog has expanded from roughly 16,000 cases at the start of the reform to an estimated 200,000 today, leaving citizens waiting 8 to 15 years to receive a final ruling. Such delays undermine the rule of law, public trust, and due process. Daily life in the Western Balkans is marked by both a declining and aging population. Like many other parts of Europe, there is an exodus of those who are skilled and educated. Illegal immigration is rampant. Unemployment and poverty rates are rising dramatically. These factors are negatively impacting the rule of law, promoting organized crime, money laundering, and corruption. Perhaps the most persistent and pressing challenge continues to be the region's deeply rooted ethno-religious divisions. In Bosnia, some observers believe that the Dayton Peace Accord's political system is exacerbating the ethnic divides as opposed to their intended role of bridging the gap. Neighboring Kosovo, on the other hand, has in place specific protections for minorities that exceed those of its EU counterparts. Kosovo fears Serbian leverage in the Association of Serb-Majority Municipalities, the so-called ASM, and has not fully implemented ASM policies. Just across the border in southern Serbia, widespread reports of passivation of the Preševo Valley are well documented by multiple sources, claiming that there is a concerted effort underway to rid the valley of ethnic Albanians. Indeed, America's adversaries are actively exploiting vulnerabilities like passivation while engaging in hybrid warfare that is adding to the instability of the region. The Chinese Communist Party has exerted its influence by conducting military drills and sending weapons to Serbia. In addition, the CCP continues to strike economic deals across the region as part of a specific effort to cultivate its malign apparatus and exploit corruption in the Western Balkans. Iranian state cyber actors known as Homeland Justice have repeatedly launched cyber attacks on Albania for hosting dissidents of the regime. In fact, an attack last summer temporarily paralyzed the municipal services of Albania's capital city, Tirana. I also want to make a brief moment to congratulate the people of Albania on their recent Independence Day and reaffirm our strong partnership anchored in shared values in our NATO alliance. Russia is also influencing growing tensions through Bosnia's Republika Srpska and Serbia. Milorad Dodik, who is barred from running from public office of RS, continues to leverage his political capital to control the Bosnian Serb entity and to play to Russia's heavy-handed tactics like threatening secession from Bosnia. Whereas Serbia, despite indirectly supplying weapons to Ukraine, also has defense ties with Russia and China, promotes Russian and Chinese propaganda, reportedly hosted Russian operatives training paramilitary groups in eastern Serbia to disrupt Moldova's 2024 and 2025 elections. Though partially explained by perceived cultural ties, Serbia's alignment with Russia cannot be separated from its energy dependence. With a majority of its gas supplied by Russia, any effort to curb Moscow's political influence must address Serbia's reliance on NIS and Gazprom. In the event of renewed conflict, NATO allies, Albania, Montenegro, North Macedonia, would be directly in the crosshairs, potentially triggering Article 5 authority. Through synchronized defense efforts, NATO countries in the Balkans should work together to build military and political deterrence. Kosovo would be particularly exposed without NATO membership, which remains blocked by Spain, Greece, Romania, and Slovakia's refusal to recognize its independence. Despite these challenges, opportunities to improve stability, peace, and prosperity in the Western Balkans remain. 8 of my 25 years in the United States Army were spent serving in Europe. 5 of those years at the strategic headquarters of NATO and the U.S. European Command. During that time, I was intimately involved in NATO's Operation Allied Force in 1999. I have firsthand experience helping ensure peace and stability in this important region, yet all those years later, the Western Balkans remain a tinderbox. Without a change in strategy, U.S. leadership must have a significant impact on maintaining stability and preventing renewed conflict that would adversely impact the balance of power in Europe. I applaud the Trump administration for re-engaging this often overlooked region. This subcommittee now has the opportunity to provide meaningful oversight and consider how Congress can help promote lasting stability, peace, and prosperity in the Western Balkans.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 30 years ago, the United States brokered the Dayton Peace Accords, ending the bloodshed of the Bosnian War. And I appreciate the subcommittee's focus on the Western Balkans and such an important anniversary. As we know, Dayton continues to underpin Bosnia's sovereignty, territorial integrity, and multi-ethnic character, and I believe the U.S. must continue to support it as an important instrument to supporting Bosnia's future. This includes the OHR, the Office of the High Representative, and while the OHR deserves criticism, the removal or weakening of this position would only embolden separatist actors across Bosnia at a time of increased tension and threats in the region. As a part of the efforts to maintain regional stability in September, I reintroduced the bipartisan Western Balkans Democracy and Prosperity Act to codify sanctions in the bad actors in the region and expand people and the people-to-people ties that exist. I'm hopeful this legislation will be incorporated into the upcoming Defense Authorization Act, and I appreciate my colleagues on both sides of the aisle and in both chambers for their support. Unfortunately, officials in power in Bosnia continue to use their discontent with the decisions of OHR to stoke separatist rhetoric, which undermines the Dayton Accords. That's why I sent a letter recently to Secretary Rubio, along with Ranking Member Meeks, expressing our disagreement with the administration's decision to remove all sanctions on Milorad Dodik, his family, and his affiliates, who have demonstrated little willingness to change their behavior in Republika Srpska. By removing all sanctions on Dodik, the Trump administration has lost their leverage Dodik may no longer be president of Republika Srpska, but he's clearly still a power, and I urge this administration to reverse course and reinstate costs on Dodik for his ongoing disruptive behavior. Just as the Trump administration should be more engaged in supporting Dayton in Bosnia, I believe the administration must take a broader view of the bilateral relationship with Serbia. For years now, Serbia's President Vučić has eroded the rule of law and strengthened his country's relationship with Russia and China. Rather than condemn Belgrade's actions, the Trump administration has embraced Vučić, rewarded his malign relationships with Beijing and Moscow by upgrading the U.S.-Serbia bilateral relationship. As a result, I led a letter with all Democratic members of this subcommittee earlier this year to Secretary Rubio, calling on him to prioritize the strengthening of anti-corruption and rule of law regimes in Serbia, as well as make clear to Belgrade that pursuing closer ties with Moscow and Beijing is not compatible with Serbia's stated aspirations to be fully incorporated into the transatlantic community. Yet rather than take anti-corruption efforts seriously, this administration has used the White House to enrich its friends and families. Just last month, Serbian officials approved legislation to allow Jared Kushner to develop a former defense ministry building in Serbia into a hotel resort, with Serbian parliamentarians openly saying they approved the legislation to make inroads with this U.S. administration. I wholeheartedly condemn President Trump's family and friends using the White House to further their own private business dealings, not only in Serbia, but also in Russia and in crypto markets around the world. Taking a step back, I believe the resolution of many regional conflicts and increased U.S. engagement in the Western Balkans would move all countries in the region closer to EU membership. This includes further progress in the EU-brokered dialogue between Serbia and Kosovo. And I call on leaders in both countries to take the initiative and cease inflammatory rhetoric. I also call on the Trump administration to reassure allies and partners in the region that the U.S. will remain engaged and committed to the region's future. This includes maintaining a U.S. military presence in NATO's peacekeeping mission, KFOR, and fully implementing the Millennium Challenge Corporation Compact in Kosovo to expand energy security. I was proud to facilitate the signing of that compact in this very room in 2022, and I appreciate the administration continuing the program. It also means the administration should continue to support cybersecurity efforts in Albania and elsewhere, as well as ensure countries like Montenegro, North Macedonia, and others are well prepared to join the European Union. In closing, I appreciate our witnesses being here today to discuss the importance of U.S. engagement in the Western Balkans, yet I remain concerned this subcommittee has yet to have a hearing, any hearing, with a Trump administration official after almost 1 year in office. And I'd urge the majority to call on the administration as witnesses before the subcommittee so we can conduct the subcommittee's oversight responsibilities of this administration's policy towards Europe is a unity. With that, I yield back.
Thank you. Other members of the committee are reminded that opening statements may be submitted for the record. We're pleased to have a distinguished panel of witnesses before us today on this important topic. Mr. Max Primorac is a senior research fellow at the Margaret Thatcher Center for Freedom at the Heritage Foundation, covering Europe, Middle East, Africa, Latin America, foreign aid, and China's Belt and Road Initiative. Thank you. And Mr. Luke Coffey is a senior fellow for the Center on Europe and Eurasia at the Hudson Institute. His work at the Hudson Institute analyzes national security and foreign policy with a focus on Europe, Eurasia, NATO, and transatlantic relations. Mr. Edward P. Joseph is a lecturer and senior fellow for the Merrill Center for Strategic Studies at the Foreign Policy Institute and Johns Hopkins University's School of Advanced International Studies. This committee recognizes the importance of the issues before us today, vitally important to Europe, and we are grateful that you are here to speak to us today. Your full statements will be made a part of the record, and I'll ask each of you to keep your remarks to 5 minutes in order to allow time for member questions. I now recognize Mr. Primorac for an opening statement. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The views I express here today are my own and should not be construed as representing any official position of the Heritage Foundation. The Balkans are not doing well, as we all know. 30 years after the signing of the Dayton Peace Accord and billions of dollars in U.S. aid spent, Bosnia-Herzegovina is a failed state. Relations between its three constituent peoples, Serbs, Croats, and Muslims, are riven with distrust. Its economy is broken. Its population is shrinking fast. The state is in permanent crisis. It is time to end this post-Dayton nation-building disaster. Foremost, the country's national sovereignty must be restored by dissolving the office of the High Representative, who dismisses elected leaders, vetoes legislation, and bans anyone he dislikes. These unaccountable foreign bureaucrats undermine the sovereignty and legitimacy of the state, block its institutions from maturing, and poison interethnic relations. Second, the State Department must end its effort to create a centralized Muslim-dominant state that violates Dayton's guarantee of equality between Bosnia's three self-governing peoples and pushes Serbs to secede. Croats suffer gross discrimination at the hands of a larger Muslim community and are denied the right to elect their own representatives, resulting in a 62% population decline. Only a third entity in majority Croat areas will save this persecuted Christian community. But the region will not stabilize until Serbia's normalization. Serbia's leaders remain wedded to a pro-Russia agenda that stokes instability among its neighbors, especially Kosovo and Montenegro, and provides Moscow, Beijing, and Tehran opportunities to undermine NATO's southern flank. The regional answer is to pull Serbia in and push Russia, China, and Iran out. Only U.S. leadership can do that. Mr. Chairman, President Trump's peace through strength global leadership, tied to practical diplomacy, offers Serbia and the Balkans a historic path towards Western integration. The President's deal-making power elsewhere has not gone unnoticed. Serbia leaders seek President Trump's personal engagement in the region. Belgrade remembers how during his first term, Mr. Trump brokered peace between Serbia and pro-U.S. Kosovo through trade and investment. President Trump should expand that deal-making approach regionally. Two strategic developments in Europe make that prospect ripe. First is the dawn of American energy supremacy. U.S. oil and gas can end Balkan energy reliance on Russia, defund Putin's war machine, and minimize Moscow's regional interference. The U.S. government was right to sanction Serbia's Russian-owned national oil and gas company. An expanded U.S.-fed natural gas pipeline in Bosnia-Herzegovina to fuel the Balkans is stalled by Muslim intransigent in Sarajevo. Pipeline expansions through North Macedonia is delayed by the predations of its neighbors. Skopje is a solid ally of the United States, recently joining us in supporting Israel and condemning the Cuban dictatorship. These represent unique opportunities to promote American energy dominance. The region also holds massive deposits of strategic minerals to offer the West relief from Chinese blackmail. Second, NATO's agreement to increase defense spending to 5% of GDP includes enhancing infrastructure. These offer the Balkans billions in investment opportunities, especially for American energy equity and construction companies. Next April's 3Cs initiative, hosted by Croatia, presents a global forum to strike regional deals. Mr. Chairman, we must not restart past foreign aid programs that promoted social reengineering, climate madness, and other left-wing agendas that have generated anti-American sentiment. Finally, the White House should assign political ambassadors to the Balkans to promote a business-focused agenda, but be ready to use visa, banking, and other sanctions alongside commercial and investment incentives to pull the region out of Russian, Chinese, and Iranian hands. To conclude, we must stop what we have been doing in the Balkans. Our foreign aid-based anti-sovereignty approach has failed. Instead, we should encourage American leadership to offer the Balkans a grand investment-based bargain that locks the region into the West and locks out our adversaries. Thank you.
Thank you. I now recognize Mr. Coffey for an opening statement. Welcome.
Chairman Self, Ranking Member Keating, and distinguished members of the committee, I'm honored to speak before this committee today about the Western Balkans. The views I express in this testimony are my own and should not be construed as representing any official position of Hudson Institute. Mr. Chairman, I will summarize my prepared statement that has been submitted for the record. To understand why the U.S. should care about the Balkans, it is important to first understand why Europe matters. Maybe Asia is the future, I don't know. But what I do know is that right now, half of the world's GDP is located between North America and Europe. What I do know is that right now, 46 out of 50 states export more to Europe than they do to China. And American exports mean American jobs. The economic prosperity that we rely on is dependent on the continent's stability. And history tells us very clearly that instability in the Balkans creates instability and security issues across the rest of Europe. The situation in the Balkans affects other interests too, including Ukraine. The #1 U.S. priority in Europe right now should be ending Russia's invasion of Ukraine in a way that makes the transatlantic community safer. This requires unity. Meanwhile, Russia sees the Balkans as an area to create instability and to divide the transatlantic alliance. In this context, Serbia remains Russia's enabler and serves as Moscow's primary foothold in the region. While Serbia occasionally signals a balanced foreign policy approach, the reality is that Belgrade remains firmly in Russia's orbit. This will not change anytime soon, no matter how much we would like it to. The Kremlin also uses the ethnic Serb entity of Republika Srpska in Bosnia and Herzegovina to sow further instability in the region. The situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina deserves particular attention for U.S. policymakers. Milorad Dodik, the longtime leader of the region, was recently removed from office by the Bosnian courts, but he remains very influential and continues to advocate for the entity's secession from the rest of Bosnia, reigniting Serb nationalist goals from the Bosnian War. During his 2 decades in power, Dodik took steps to undermine Bosnia and Herzegovina's legitimate state structures by creating parallel institutions inside Republika Srpska. Throughout this was supported by Russia and also by Serbia. Dodik was sanctioned during the first Trump administration for, and I quote, obstructing the Dayton Accords. These sanctions lasted for the duration of the first Trump administration and throughout Biden's administration. However, last October, the U.S. Treasury unexpectedly removed Dodik and his network from sanctions, an action that appeared out of the blue, unanchored to any broader U.S. strategy towards the Balkans, and without clarity on what, if anything, we got in return for this measure. From the standpoint of U.S. interests, this matters because political stability matters in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And the political stability in that country has a major effect on the overall stability of the Balkans and thus on Europe's overall security architecture. It is worth recalling that this year marks the 30th anniversary of the Dayton Agreement. Not only did it end genocide and prevent any renewed outbreak of fighting for more than 30 years, it also kept Bosnia and Herzegovina as a single state at a time when breakup seemed likely. Although it is still an outside view in many policy circles, the idea of scrapping Dayton altogether is gaining traction. The Dayton Agreement is not perfect, but it has been one of the greatest diplomatic achievements by the United States in the post-Cold War era. And even with the problems that we see in Bosnia today, they're not killing each other and there's no genocide taking place. Scrapping the agreement would likely create more instability than exists today at a moment when the United States and its European allies should be focused on maintaining unity over Ukraine and limiting Moscow's ability to manufacture crises elsewhere in Europe. In conclusion, Mr. Chairman, although the U.S. is not a Balkan country, it can certainly be a Balkan power, and President Trump should take steps to ensure America's national interests are secure there. Fortunately, he has a lot to build on from his first term. He led calls for the 3 Seas initiative, which is now active today. He led calls for the construction of the LNG terminal in Croatia, which now brings in more American LNG than from any other source. He brought in Montenegro into NATO, oversaw the Washington Agreement between Serbia and Kosovo, and the Prespa Agreement between Greece and Macedonia. Now, back in the Oval Office, President Trump has made global diplomacy and ending wars a central theme of his second term. The Balkans should stay on his radar. To this end, I refer honorable members to the 10 recommendations I offer in my prepared statement, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I now recognize Mr. Joseph for an opening statement.
Keating, distinguished members of the Subcommittee on Europe. Thank you for this opportunity to examine flashpoints in the Balkans and to discuss how the U.S. can seize a rare opportunity for a breakthrough towards lasting stability. Mr. Chairman, the fact that the subcommittee must hold today's timely and important hearing 35 years after the violent breakup of Yugoslavia began raises one overarching question. Why is this region, in which the U.S., EU, and NATO hold commanding leverage, still unstable? While no single actor, local or international, is wholly responsible for the persistent tensions and malaise, one prerequisite for stability remains unfulfilled: Serbia's acceptance of the Western order for the region. The U.S. and allied struggle against malign Russian and Chinese influence in the Balkans will not prevail as long as those revisionist powers have a revisionist, quote, strategic partner, unquote, in Belgrade. The moment for change has arrived. With an administration-imposed deadline looming for the Russian owners to exit Serbia's national oil company, NIS, the U.S. Embassy chargé in Belgrade stated this last week: when it comes to choosing its partners, Russia and China or the Euro-Atlantic community, quote, Serbia is at the crossroads. And so is the United States. Now is the moment to stand firm, moving Belgrade towards finally deciding its strategic orientation. Choosing the Euro-Atlantic path, the only rational one for Serbia, which cannot become the Belarus of the Balkans, will end the manipulation of Western partners who want to see Serbia succeed. A decisive choice will open the path to prosperity and comity that Serbians and their neighbors deserve. Fortunately, the administration is in a strong position to guide Belgrade in this direction. The year-long mass protests by Serbian citizens demanding government accountability in the wake of the fatal collapse at the Novi Sad train station in 2024, which, as the subcommittee knows, part of China's Belt and Road strategy, which U.S. officials in Belgrade should point out. This collapse and protests have removed the aura of invincibility and fear of the government led by Serbian President Alexander Vučić. Instead, anxiety has shifted, evidenced by attacks on journalists, protesters, and violence and intimidation of voters at recent local elections, while the government avoids the obvious solution, which is to hold national elections. As the EU has learned the hard way, the Vučić government is also struggling to deliver on its commitments. Last week, Rio Tinto, the concessionaire on the Ballyhooed lithium strategic partnership that Brussels and Belgrade signed last year, shelved the project because it cannot get permitting for the mine that is siphoning capital. The ability of the Serbian government to deliver on its commitment to demolish the General Staff and Ministry of Defense building, part of the Trump-branded hotel project in downtown Belgrade, is in doubt, given the broad spectrum of opposition and the heritage of the building stretching back well before the 1999 NATO strike on the site. Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member, and distinguished committee members, the path to finally achieving lasting stability runs through Belgrade, not via routine supplication of the government, but a firm hand and genuine partnership. What does that mean concretely? First, the U.S. must not fall for Russian or Serbian ploys to buy time on exiting Nice. Members should support the administration moving Belgrade swiftly towards nationalizing Nice, recovering the national oil company that was sold for a song to Moscow in 2008. The U.S. should support Belgrade by devising countermeasures to dissuade Moscow from cutting off gas or hiking prices, such as immediate closure of Russian media outlets, RT and Sputnik, now hosted by Serbia in defiance of EU sanctions, imposition of EU sanctions on Russia, as Serbia has refused to impose, in contrast to all its WB6 neighbors, and closure of the Russian humanitarian center in the south of Serbia, widely suspected as an intelligence gathering site. Second, the U.S. can break Belgrade's destructive relationship with Russia and China by tackling the standoff with Kosovo. And I should mention Serbia's relationship with other malign actors that include, in this hemisphere, Venezuela. The ultimate answer is not the EU-led dialogue, but a path to NATO membership for Pristina and Belgrade. President Trump is well placed to make this historic transformative offer. In the meantime, the U.S. must depart from the imbalanced stance towards Belgrade and Pristina, where only the latter is held accountable for provocations. This disparity has coincided with flare-ups, including the 2023 Banska operation in the north of Kosovo, and incidents continue, including the recent alleged abduction of a Kosovo Serb citizen from Kosovo. Actively advancing the strategic dialogue with Serbia, while suspending the same with Kosovo, is ignoring the lessons of the recent past. The U.S. can build deterrence by building up its bilateral relationship with Kosovo, especially as Serbia increases its defense relationship with China, underscored by the drills Serbian troops conducted in China this summer. Third, seize the best opportunity in years to break the atrophy in Bosnia-Herzegovina created by the removal of Milorad Dodik from the presidency of Republika Srpska. Unfortunately, the hasty removal of sanctions on Dodik has brought the administration more work and less leverage. The initial breakthrough last week on the Southern Interconnector is proof that active, created U.S. engagement can work. The Trump administration is well placed to collaborate with the International High Representative to break the seminal dispute on state and defense property, unleashing opportunities for U.S. investors and Bosnian citizens. Washington can address the other bully in the region, Bulgaria, by backing Macedonian efforts for a reasonable guarantee that Skopje will not be subject to more identity demands from Sofia. The U.S. must ensure that the VMRO-led government adheres to the most successful peace agreement in the region, the Ohrid Framework Agreement. Finally, active American engagement, not nation building, can help NATO allies Albania and Montenegro advance on their EU path, giving them the internal monitoring and external protection that they need. This includes focusing on the backsliding of the judiciary and arrests of opposition figures in Albania, and focusing on interference from Belgrade and Montenegro. In conclusion, by seizing the moment, the U.S. and its partners can move from suppressing
Thank you. I should have announced Mr. Joseph had asked for a couple of extra minutes, and in agreement with the ranking member, he received them. So I now recognize myself for 5 minutes of questioning. Mr. Joseph, I want to start with two quotes from Serbia's constitution. First, from the preamble of the 2006 Constitution of the Republic of Serbia. Considering also that the province of Kosovo and Metohija is an integral part of the territory of Serbia, that it has the status of a substantial autonomy within the sovereign state of Serbia, and that from such status of the province of Kosovo and Metohija follow constitutional obligations of all state bodies to uphold and protect the state interest of Serbia in Kosovo and Montenegro in all internal and foreign political relations. Then Article 114 of the Serbian Constitution, which is, while assuming office, the President of the Republic shall take the following oath before the National Assembly. I do solemnly swear that I will devote all of my efforts to preserve the sovereignty and integrity of the territory of the Republic of Serbia, including Kosovo and Metohija, as its constituent part, as well as to provide exercise of human and minority rights and freedoms, respect and protection of the Constitution and laws, preservation of peace and welfare of all citizens of the Republic of Serbia, and perform all my duties conscientiously and responsibly. Mr. Joseph, does Serbia recognize Kosovo's right to exist as a sovereign nation?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. The answer to that is clearly no. Serbia does not recognize Kosovo's right to exist, nor does it recognize the significance of the 2010 decision and opinion rendered by the International Court of Justice in The Hague, brought by Serbia through the United Nations. And that opinion of the ICJ said that Kosovo's declaration of independence violates neither international law nor the UN Security Council Resolution 1244. Nonetheless, Serbia clings to its position, claims that that decision doesn't recognize Kosovo's statehood. However, Belgrade doesn't take the obvious course, does not take its claim on statehood to The Hague. In my opinion, the reason why not is because Belgrade knows that it would lose in that case.
Just a reminder of the timeline. 1999, the U.S. attacked Yugoslavia, still Yugoslavia at that point. 2006 was the Serbia Constitution ratified. 2008, Kosovo declared independence and the United States recognized Kosovo. 2013, the ASM was started. 2023 was the Ohrid Agreement. So that's the timeline that we're working on of the stagnation. So, Mr. Joseph, one more question for you. On June 13th, you published an article titled, "The United States is Creating a Kosovo Crisis." In it, you said Biden administration officials are as dogmatic as the Kosovo prime minister who has attracted Western ire. What do you mean by dogmatic, and who were you referring to?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. The irony of the Biden administration policy was when it came into office, there was great fear in Belgrade that it would depart from the posture of the prior administration, that is the first Trump administration. And instead, what we saw was continuity. We saw continuity in the Biden administration from the first Trump administration, which, to sum it up, was excessive deference to Belgrade. And that excessive deference led to the flashpoints, the very flashpoints that this hearing talks about, most notably the Banska operation, very serious operation by the paramilitaries in the north of Kosovo, very likely a serious violation of Belgrade's commitment to NATO. And this followed as I've referenced, this imbalanced approach, only holding Pristina accountable and not holding Belgrade. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Primorac, how has Kosovo's election crisis impeded our relationship with Kosovo and with the EU? And what do we need to reestablish the productive strategic dialogue?
Mr. Chairman, I think at the end of this month, there's going to be new elections in Kosovo. And I think the stakes are very high as to the results of that election. Right now, the youth of Kosovo are leaving in large numbers. It's a country where it has enormous energy potential that could be beneficial for itself, the region, and also for the United States. This is a country that we need to support. Any grand deal that we do in the region, including Serbia, must include recognizing that country. It is a country that is 100% opposed to Communist China, to Russia, to Tehran. Recently, they moved their embassy to Jerusalem from Tel Aviv, a promise they made to President Trump and a promise that they have kept. We're still waiting for Belgrade. Thank you.
I now recognize Ranking Member Keating for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Joseph, how does the lifting of the sanctions on Dodik and his affiliates embolden him to remain in politics and continue to further Republika Srpska's secessionist inclinations?
Ranking Member Keating, it does precisely that. By prematurely giving up our leverage over Dodik, we incentivize this long-standing malefactor and ally of Russia, open ally of Russia, to continue his destabilizing activities, which we see. Instead of stepping down as head, now first having been banished as president of Republika Srpska, he refuses to step down as head of the SNSD party. As the Central Election Commission, an institution of the state of Bosnia-Herzegovina, has insisted. So the answer to your question is this provides exactly the wrong incentives, removes our leverage, and makes it more difficult for the positive actions that the U.S. Embassy and the administration are trying to do to solve this southern interconnector impasse, which would relieve Bosnia's dependency on Russian gas. Thank you, sir.
Would you say, too, that the same holds true for his family and affiliates?
I would absolutely say that, and that's what was so surprising by this all-at-once decision. I simply don't understand. I've negotiated many agreements in the region. I negotiated an agreement between Kosovo and Serbia to hold Serbian national elections in Kosovo. You never give up your leverage until necessary.
Thank you. Mr. Coffey, thank you for your characterization in the beginning and your statements about Europe matters, because I think that's really critical, and it's one of the underpinnings of this particular hearing, too, as to why the Western Balkans matter. You mentioned still the importance of the Dayton peace accords. Who would benefit if that is, disbanded and we move away from that?
Thank you very much for that question. Before I answer this question, I want to put everything in the correct context and remind that I believe the #1 priority for the United States right now in Europe is maintaining unity and stability so we can deal with what is the largest war on the continent since the 1940s. In that context, I think that disbanding, unwinding, tinkering Dayton and its institutions is too much of a risky business, which could have unpredictable outcomes that could create additional problems at a time when we don't need any. There are, as you've heard from my fellow witnesses, there are issues with Dayton. No one, I don't think, has said it's perfect. It's now 30 years old. Things change, times change. You have different personalities coming in, personalities leaving, so the whole dynamic can change. But right now is not the time to have this discussion if you're looking at it purely from a U.S. national interest point of view.
Okay, thank you so much. And Mr. Joseph, the Millennium Challenge Corporation's compact with Kosovo, it does continue to bring energy security and workforce development to Kosovo. Can you comment on the importance of diversifying away from coal and how the MCC compact facilitates this diversification, and as well as U.S. foreign assistance to Kosovo vitally affecting Kosovo's ability to move forward in the future? How does the U.S. foreign assistance in Kosovo facilitate regional stability, as well as Kosovo's future in the EU and in NATO?
Thank you, Mr. Ranking Member. Our continuing support for Kosovo, economic, and I would emphasize here military, is essential for U.S. interests. We have to remember that the United States and NATO already have the obligation, responsibility to care for Kosovo's security under KFOR, the successful NATO peacekeeping force. So we already have that requirement and obligation. The more we can do to enable Kosovo's economic security and its military security by enhancing our bilateral relationship with Kosovo, it serves our own security interests. Let me quickly add here, Ranking Member Keating, that the solution here, this standoff is not this intractable problem going back to 1389 that no one can solve between Kosovo and Serbia. It has a solution, and its name is NATO. A pathway, only a pathway to NATO will effectively end the standoff, because at that point, Serbia will have no alternative. Its isolation campaign, its non-recognition campaign, its dependence on Russia and China at the UN Security Council will be meaningless. Why? Because NATO membership is vastly more important for Kosovo than is UN membership.
Well, thank you for addressing KFOR's importance, and I yield back.
And now recognize Representative Davidson from Ohio.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman Self, thanks for this hearing today. I believe you and I may be the only two members in this subcommittee who served in Europe during our time in the Army. So thank you, and I'd like to think that we can say from firsthand experience how important Europe is to the United States and how important the security relationships are there. I was there in the Cold War, holding the line when the cause freedom led to the fall of the Berlin Wall. I was there in 1989 and got to see kind of the culmination of a lot of this when the wall came down. I know what I was there fighting for, but I also know what I was fighting against, and that was totalitarianism. So we're seeing today ideas that we rejected during the Cold War being embraced by Western Europe. I often think about Vice President J.D. Vance's February speech in Munich. The Vice President noted that, quote, "Within living memory of many of you in the room, the Cold War positioned defenders of democracy against much more tyrannical forces on this continent. And consider the side in that fight that censored dissidents, that closed churches, that canceled elections. Were they the good guys? Certainly not. And thank God they lost the Cold War. They lost because they neither valued nor respected all of their extraordinary blessings of liberty, the freedom to surprise, to make mistakes, to invent, and to build, end quote. I worry that these core values that we fought for to win the Cold War are lost in the European Union and NATO today. I fear that totalitarianism has infiltrated the very institutions that we stood up to counter totalitarianism. When lawmakers are arrested for quoting the Bible, when political parties are banned despite their popularity with the public, when people are put in jail for free speech or for prayer, I mean, these aren't the things we were defending. They're not the things I think we're supposed to be defending today, but they're going on unchecked. So it's time to fundamentally assess what Vice President Vance asked. What are we defending? What are we fighting for in Europe? Now, unfortunately, many of these institutions are living in the past about a new reality. For example, in recent months, the Department of War elected not to send a rotational brigade to Romania. The Senate Armed Services Committee has responded to that in retaliation by blocking the president's nominees to the Department of War Policy Office, for example. So, Mr. Primorac, is Romania of vital national security interest to the United States? Will we be irreparably harmed by not sending this one rotational brigade there? Is this going to cause catastrophic damage to the United States security posture?
I think when we're talking about lawfare in Europe, it's against conservatives and those who hold conservative views, especially religious views. And we've seen coming out of Brussels a tendency to try to acquire more and more centralized power, and it always has a left-wing bias to it. And it's hurting throughout all of Europe. With these kinds of activities by Brussels, it encourages politicians and government officials in places like France and Germany and Poland and other places to crack down on political opposition. So they use, and it's the same thing with the disinformation campaigns with respect to Russia. There's been disinformation campaigns by Russia for decades, ever since the end of the Cold War. Maybe it stopped for about 2 years. It has continued forward. So what the administration is doing to send a clear message to Europe that we value very strongly our transatlantic relationships, but we have to have a common set of democratic values, and that means accepting opposing views.
Part of that is putting pressure on the Europeans to step up, and that's part of where the administration's policy prerogatives have said, yeah, we're going to withhold this rotational brigade. Unfortunately, within our own party, within Republican Party in the Senate Armed Services Committee is denying approval to President Trump's team. So I remember when Senator Tuberville had the courage to stand up and block nominees in the Biden administration because the Department of War was violating the law and funding abortion. A bipartisan coalition of senators descended on him to make his life really, frankly, a hell until he relented and they came up with a different way to approve nominees. It was the biggest drama in the world. But now that the glove's on the other hand, blocking our president, President Trump's national security nominees, seems not such a big deal to the Senate Armed Services Committee. So I'd like to call the Senate to stop blocking the MAGA agenda and support our president in his appointments. We can't do much about it here in the House, but I think I'd call it out. So I further commend President Trump and his team for their work in crafting a realistic peace deal in Ukraine. They've worked diligently on this, and I get that some people in the Senate want to undermine it. Frankly, some people in the House want to undermine it, and certainly some people in the European Union and NATO want to undermine it.